Alright guys, Papa Pepper here, just sharing some thoughts about writing and authoring stuff as pertaining to posting on Steemit. This can pertain to blog posts, but I'm more doing like for those who are writing fiction or different stuff like that. Just so you got a background on where I'm coming from. Not a writer, really haven't done much professional writing of any sort. My education was through high school. I did take a creative writing class. That was just more of a cheap credit is what I was going for there. Don't know if I really picked up any skills or not, but potentially. Recently I just put out it was chapter 34 of my original book, Love Like Kissin. And that thing is crazy just because I started in like 2011. I still haven't finished it, but I thought, hey, here's Steemit, great place to release things. I have some chapters already. If I begin releasing them and people like it and get into it, that'll encourage me to continue releasing them and writing the new ones. And, be encouragement to finish this, potentially getting input, payouts, proofreading, whatever along the way. And then I said the encouragement to finish it, and then I could have a finished volume that then I could publish in paper book or ebook or some other way as well. I put that out anyway, chapter 34 of that recently, and like I said, that one's crazy because Verbal D is now doing a audiobook on that for some time. He's at chapter 33 already on the audiobook. It just started being translated into German, it's being translated into Portuguese, and it's being translated into Spanish. So that's 3 other languages that my English fiction story is being released in, and the crazy part there is just I came up with Operation Translation a while ago, saying, look, not everyone can come up with post ideas or other things. Some people got good skills like being bilingual or more. I said, you know what, if you guys want, you can translate any of my posts, use my images, my stuff, whatever, translate them into different language, just to put them out there to bless some people who aren't English speaking natives, non-native English tongue people. And then they can get the information or the whatever it is I was writing, and the translator can keep the full post payout themselves. And periodically there's been some who've come through and done a job with it, and recently Soy Manu is doing the Spanish one, and then Andy Lou is doing the Portuguese one with a couple other guys, and heading up a real Babelfish kind of translation project too, so really excited about that. So it's interesting to me that I started a book years ago. I'm still not done with it, and it's already being translated into 3 other languages plus an audiobook. Talking about encouragement to finish the thing. That's pretty cool. So anyway, Pen Author made a comment and said, hey, what advice can you give to newer writers, people who are trying to write? And since I've had some level of success, at least in my writing, and since I've been on the Steemit platform now for over 15 months, and since I've done well with it, I thought I'll at least offer up some advice. So here's just a couple simple pointers, advice from me, take it or leave it, whatever you guys think, just what I consider to be stuff to think about. The one thing is, if you're writing fiction, there's a tendency to write yourself into stories, kind of revealing some stuff about yourself from actual events, people, places, things, stuff like that. I say that's kind of something where if you're not trying to be anonymous, run with it. I mean, if it's what comes naturally to you, if it's what's pouring out of you as you're writing, go for it. In my book, I talk about New Orleans, I talk about a restaurant called Reginelli's, I talk about being a drunk, I talk about other things that I'm very familiar with. Things that I've lived. And the interesting thing too is in my book, the characters are distinctly different characters, but with the life I've lived, I can kind of look at things from each of their angle, and it's kind of like almost facets of myself over time. So I can, some of me shows up in the story just because authors write themselves in the story. I say unless you're really trying to avoid it, just run with it. If it's what's pouring out of you and flowing out of you and what comes naturally, that's all the better. Another thing to think about is when you're writing something, don't write specifically for your audience, meaning, I think people are really going to be into lengthy volumes on floral arrangement, and I'll write about how, you use some baby's breath to fill in the negative space and stuff like that. Write what you want to write about. because then you're, as a person, a real person, really writing what you want to write about, will be connecting with readers who really want to read it, rather than you trying to fake something for somebody else who really likes that stuff, and I wouldn't recommend that at all. When it comes to Steemit, as well, one thing that you got to consider is the fact that long blocks of text are probably not going to be the best way to go. If you're writing fiction, there's nothing other than what's coming out of your head. However, what I would do is, one thing I read from a post, it was like a year ago, The Alien put out, and he was talking about that a lot of writers these days are using shorter paragraphs. It used to be you'd have an introduction sentence, a closing sentence, where you kind of write what you're going to be writing about, you run through it, and then you close, and paragraphs are longer. But for whatever reason, a lot of really good authors are using shorter paragraphs. It's what readers this day and age kind of like or enjoy. So that's one thing I've done myself. But it's much better than, if somebody looks at a huge block of text, people, I don't know, they get bored with that, they move on. So if you're writing fiction, first of all, try to use smaller paragraphs, would be a recommendation I'd give. Second of all, find some way to break it up. Include some images if you're able to. I have not been doing that whatsoever with my book, Love Like His. But what I've been doing is I just kind of add a line, and then I make a little bit of bold text every once in a while, kind of something popping out to kind of grab the attention. It breaks up the monotony of just the text, the same way an image would. So consider that. And then the other thing I would say is proofreading is key. Sometimes the hardest stuff to proofread is that which you've already written, because you're so familiar with the text that you're reading what you think it says or what you wanted to write, what you were planning on writing, rather than what it actually says. That's a huge one on my end. I can write, but proofreading is terrible. Often I'll even make posts, and Mr. V. Cellier will sit there and send me a text in chat, and he'll say, hey, here's a misspelled word, here's something you didn't. I talked about going to the C store the other day, the SEE store at Baker Creek Heirloom Seed Company. He sent me a text and saying, hey, it's the seed store, there's a D there. I'm like, how can I miss that? Well, I think I know what I'm writing about, so I'm writing, I'm thinking I'm writing it accurately, and when I proofread it, I just miss it. So make sure to proofread the best you can, and if you're able to, have somebody else proofread. I know sometimes it's like, hey, all right, I got my text done, my post done, I just want to click post. Hey, you can go for that too, but what you're looking for is a quality, of work, whether you're writing for Steemit or doing something else. So proofreading would be key. And then one thing I'd consider too is if you are a fiction writer, then this is more if you have an ongoing story, is I like a series with consistency. And you can see here I started writing a book back in 2011 or 12. Now it's 2017. I started posting this on Steemit over a year ago, and I already had some chapters written. I'm still not done with it. It's being translated into 3 other languages and an audiobook right now, and I'm still not done with it. There has been a lack of consistency. But guys like Gregory F. and Verbal D have been like, oh great, the next chapter. And now as new people show up, they say, hey, I really like this chapter. I'll have to go back and read them all. But what I would do is a consistency. When Verbal D and I first met on Steemit, I was doing that one, and he was doing one, something about some ocean stuff, some fishermen, this story with some sharks and some other things, and he was putting them out kind of, I think pretty consistently, so I was always going there looking for the next one because I wanted to read more of the story. If you're a fiction writer, even build up a couple chapters ahead of time before you start releasing, but try to. If you're putting something out on a daily basis, then people know, hey, tonight when I get home, I can check and see what so-and-so posted, and if they got the next chapter. They have something to look forward to on a daily basis, and when you even wrap up that volume, they may look to you for the next thing to do. I know a lot of people these days do a lot of this stuff, a lot of television, a lot of video games, a lot of other things, but people still like reading. People still like a good fiction story, stuff like that. So those are just some things I would consider. If you write yourself in the story, run with it. That's fine. Put out things on a consistent basis, like I said. Check the proofreading. Got to go with the proofreading, and just kind of when you write, find some way of breaking up the text. The fiction tag on Steemit has gotten some good support really since it started. Writing as well. Poetry. There's some people who've done really well with just the poetry. And then, often I'll use like creative or something like that too when I'm writing my fiction stuff. So those are just some of my thoughts, because pen author asked me to, and with a name like pen author, you can see there's desire to do some writing there. Want to improve on Steemit. Just asked me for some thoughts, so there they are. Hopefully it helps someone. Like I said, it may not work in every medium or every outlet you're looking at, but that's my advice for those who are trying to write on Steemit, and specifically fiction stuff. So pop out. Hope it helps.